The search and rescue mission continues following the collapse of a multi-storey building on Monday afternoon. 7 people have been confirmed dead, with 39 still pinned underneath the debris. Rescue workers are currently on site in efforts to retrieve those unaccounted for. Now, it's the third day of the search and rescue. The rescue workers, out of the 36 people retrieved so far, 7 have died and 16 remain in a critical condition in hospital. A specialized asbestos removal company is currently tasked with deconstructing the old parking structure located at the back of the site. The rescue operation is now approaching 48 hours. Over 200 rescue workers are on site. Disaster management in the province says the last retrieval made was about 5 a.m. this morning. All right, now let's discuss the possible cause of this collapse. We're now joined by Gundo Maswime, UCT Civil Engineering Lecturer. Thank you so much for your time on the program. Now, of course, just moments ago, in fact, we heard that another possible rescue was made, but we'll get those details a little bit later on with those on the ground. But you know, let's talk then about the possible causes here. But before we do that, we understand, of course, that as investigations continue on what the causes are of this collapse, the main focus now is on the search and rescue. Just given that this is a multi-storey apartment block, one would imagine the complexity, you know, of trying to rescue more people. So talk to us about what rescue workers then need to know in, you know, and consider in some of, you know, these various considerations, just given the fact that this is such a complex rescue mission.
Important thing to take into consideration is the fact that you have got a building with multiple stories, which means you have got several floors. And those slabs will have to be removed from the one right on top. You cannot, just to be systematic. The other thing is, when you looked at the mode of collapse, it was very sudden. So it looks like the structure, it almost felt like a controlled explosion where everything imploded right at once. So they will have to go through the rubble very systematically. Of course, they will use rescue dogs as well. And there was a basement in the building, so which also means that there could be pockets, right? There could be people who were working at the basement, people who were working at the various floors.
Now, in as far as just looking at some of the information that we know so far, I mean, we heard yesterday during that media briefing that was held by various officials that the developer is known as NT Neotrend Group, and that the development is ICE Projects. They submitted their plans, you know, to the city in 2022 in December, and these were approved in July of 2023. You know, with what we know and the little information that is coming out as those investigations continue, what could we possibly be looking at here in terms of, you know, the causes?
Thank you. Normally, if you remember, there was a mall that collapsed in Tongat in 2012. And it was later found that the cause of the collapse were 2 under-designed columns. So, but if you look at the mode of failure of that mall, it almost fell to the side. This seems to have gone down as one single unit. And from the submission of drawings, it looks like there was a point where somebody acting on behalf of the developer had requested to make some changes to the submitted drawings. And those changes involved putting an additional floor and adding a basement foundation. My suspicion, of course, it's speculation. We're still going to find out what happened. My suspicion is that they would have added the floor and only took consideration of the foundation, because when you build a basement, it is also a form of foundation and it's quite a stable foundation. But forgot to think about the interaction of all the other structural members, like the columns, that might have required to be braced, because the original design would have been the columns and the beams that are there would have been designed for 4 floors, for example. And now you've got 5 floors, and you don't have to worry only about the foundation. You also have to think about what then happens to all the other columns, and especially what then happens to the structure during the construction phase when it's still susceptible to collapse.
I would imagine those are engineering fundamentals, to get right. We now know, of course, that the province has appointed an engineering company, independent structural engineering company, V3 Engineers, to start looking at these possible causes. Where would they first stop be? I would imagine what you've just described here, in as far as, added plans that may necessarily not have been approved.
The best place to start, of course, it will be with the detailed design drawings that were produced by the engineer. And I would typically ask for the original ones with 4 floors and the amended ones that had an additional floor, to see if the changes were only on the foundation or if also the other structural members have been redesigned, and if they were not, then determine the kind of loads that would come with an additional floor, starting right from the top going all the way down. And I think that is where it would be. If you have seen videos of the church in Nigeria that collapsed a few years ago as well, you would see that the mode of failure was very similar. And even in that incident, we learned later that an additional floor was added, but to a building that was already standing. Here, the floor was added before the building was constructed. So there are similarities, because the distribution of loads will still be the same. So when the structure fails, it fails as one unit, because the load will still be distributed in the same way. So that is why I'm speculating that it is likely that the additional floor would have added some loads to the structure that were not anticipated during the design phase. So that is where it starts.
Mr. Maswime, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. I mean, we could talk about a number of possible angles, but unfortunately we have to get other viewpoints as well. But thank you so much for that. Of course, that was Gundo Maswime, UCT Civil Engineering Lecturer, just giving us his thoughts on the possibilities as investigations, of course, continue.